Hello and welcome to Casual Learning. My name is John Bannon. Today I'm going to start a series um, explaining each and every chapter of my newest book. My newest book is called God and Our Superdeterministic Universe, the number one argument for the existence of God. You can get this book from Amazon Kindle. And it's priced very inexpensive. It's meant to inform people of what I consider the number one argument for the existence of God. So, um, what is superdeterminism? This video is the introduction to my book. I haven't reached chapter 1 yet. That'll be next. But the whole book revolves around this concept of superdeterminism. Superdeterminism is a physics theory. And what it says that the universe is predetermined. That is, the past creates the future, and the future retrocauses or creates the past. Everything is strictly deterministic in that sense. And the mechanism behind that superdeterminism can be either the initial conditions of the universe at the moment of the Big Bang. And that would work like, think of it this way: you have the Big Bang, and it expands, the universe expands from the moment of its first existence. And that expansion contains all the interactions of all the matter and energy in the universe, creating the initial conditions or the initial correlations of the universe, which eventually are seen in superdeterminism and specifically quantum entanglement. The other mechanism for superdeterminism, and the one that I favor, is based on a 2020 proof set forth by Swedish physicist Johan Hansen, where he explains that the universe is a static block reality without temporal causation or causation in time. And therefore, the universe simply appears the way it is because that's the way it is. It's not caused to be that way in time. It simply is that way. In other words, it's a static, uh, higher dimensional object which consists of hyperplanes of space-time in a manifold. So this is really the concept of Einstein's block universe, but with a vengeance. And the vengeance is that temporal causation or causation in time is not real. Now, that's astonishing, but he proves it. And what that means is, generally speaking, everybody thinks, well, the present moment of time was caused by the previous moment of time, and the future moment of time is caused by the present moment of time. Things just evolve or change in time, and that's how the world goes. Well, Dr. Hansen proves that that is, in fact, not true. The world is really a static block, and the past moment and the present moment and the future moment are still there. You are simply experiencing each of those hyperplanes of space-time going forward as essentially an illusion caused by your brain. So that's a very, very interesting concept, and he proves it. And that concept can be used to prove the existence of God and disprove many atheistic or nihilistic philosophies. And that's what my whole book is about. You'll see that as we go forward. One of the central concepts in Dr. Hansen's proof is something called quantum entanglement. Quantum entanglement is a well-known physics phenomenon where subatomic particles, such as, let's say, particles of light, like a photon, become entangled. That is, they become their measurements depend upon each other. It's a special process, but it can be done. And the result is you get this very strange, what Einstein called spooky action at a distance. So, for instance, if you take two photons and you entangle them, and then you separate those entangled photons any distance you want, even half a universe apart. When you measure the spin of one of those entangled photons, the spin of the other entangled photon will always be the exact opposite. So if this photon is measured clockwise, this photon will always be measured counterclockwise. And the great mystery is, well, how does this photon know what its spin should be in order to correlate perfectly opposite with this other photon? And it seems to be spooky action at a distance. It doesn't matter how far apart in time or space these two entangled photons are, they instantaneously know each other's spin in order to correlate to be just the opposite. So the great mystery is, how is that possible? Especially in light of the fact that you can separate these two entangled photons so far apart that there's no way they could possibly communicate with each other fast enough to communicate this information necessary for their correlation. So nothing goes faster than the speed of light. So it's a big mystery as to how these particles know what their spins should be because they're entangled with one another. And Dr. Hansen proves how it is that this happens. So, a little bit about the history of superdeterminism. There was a great physicist from Northern Ireland. His name was Dr. John Bell. And he did his work in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. And he came up with something called Bell's inequalities. And Bell's inequality is essentially a test for showing whether something can be explained through a local interaction. So specifically within terms of quantum entanglement, if quantum entanglement is shown to violate Bell's inequalities, then that shows that the phenomenon, the spooky action at a distance, has to be caused by something non-local. In other words, it's not within the general space-time of the two particles. It has to be something non-local. And that would explain why two entangled particles half a universe apart could know how to correlate with each other upon measurement, because the phenomenon that's responsible for that correlation is a non-local phenomenon. It's not a local phenomenon. It's not a phenomenon that involves local communication, such as through something going near the speed of light. So Bell created Bell's inequalities. He showed that quantum entanglement violated these inequalities, which means it has to be a non-local phenomenon. However, there were three assumptions to Bell's inequalities. And in a 1985 BBC radio interview, Dr. Bell was asked about Bell's inequalities and was there any loophole to get out of it. And one of those loopholes he mentioned, he termed the phrase superdeterminism. And what he meant by that was one of his assumptions underlying Bell's inequalities was something called statistical independence, which means that the experimenter is the experimenter's conduct is not in any way determined by the experimental setup. So there's no correlation between what the experimenter does and the experimental results. It's the assumption that the scientist or experimenter is outside the experiment, independent of it, and is studying it from a view. But Dr. Bell explained that, well, if that wasn't true, that if there is this dependence or determinism or this correlation between the experimental results, the experimental setup, and the actual experimenter or physicist involved, then you could avoid Bell's inequalities in quantum entanglement. But that would require superdeterminism. And by super, he meant that essentially statistical independence was not real, and that everything is determined, is super determined, even your own conduct and decision making when deciding and running this experiment. Now, superdeterminism has an expanded meaning since 1985. And it's important to note the differences between the different types of superdeterminism. And there's two main types of physics theories for superdeterminism. One is looking for something called hidden variables. So in the hidden variables understanding of superdeterminism, the idea is that there is some sort of causal reason for the spooky action at the distance, but that causal reason goes back to the beginning of the universe and the initial conditions or correlations of the universe. So there's this cause and effect through time to the present moment, starting with the beginning of the universe, that explains why quantum entangled particles are correlated, even if they're a universe apart. So they're looking for hidden variables. So the hidden variable means there is this variable here, this temporal causation through time that's going on. It's just that you don't know what it is. It's too complex or too difficult for you to even see. The other form of superdeterminism, and the one that I favor, is the one proposed by Dr. Hansen. And Dr. Hansen doesn't use hidden variables. He simply says that it's not spooky action at a distance. It's actually a local phenomenon in quantum entanglement. But what it is it's the local appearance of timeless hyperplanes of space-time in the manifold surrounding the measurement. So Dr. Hansen looks at the universe like Einstein did, which is a block universe. So in this view of the universe is a manifold of hyperplanes of space-time. And what that means is you can think of a frozen moment of time as a three-dimensional frozen moment of time as a hyperplane of space-time. And in relativity, it's a local phenomenon. So you can kind of think of it non-locally, if that makes it easier for you to understand. You can kind of think of the whole universe being sliced up in terms of these frozen moments of time, and then all those moments stacked together. And as you proceed through that, or you're a geodesic moving through that, that's your experience of time. It's an analogy would be like a flip book. Every hyperplane would be a page in a flip book, and your experience of time would be as you're going through each of these pages, you appear on these pages, and as your appearance changes on those pages in the manifold, that's your experience of time. Now, that's the Einstein block universe idea. And there's a lot of support for that. especially the experimental proof of relativistic effects such as time dilation. So Hansen uses the block universe to explain superdeterminism. His proof was published in a journal called Physics Essays, volume 33, number 2, in June of 2020. It's a great brief proof that if you want to read it online, you should. It's only 3 pages long. See, here it is. And what he does is he explains by using Einstein's special theory of relativity, specifically the relativity of simultaneity. He uses the relativity of simultaneity and the common knowledge of the typical quantum entanglement measurement experiment to show how it would have to be the case that the universe is predetermined and that, in fact, causation in time is not real, or continuous causation in time is not real. That's a fundamental underlying assumption of physics, that there's continuous causation. So essentially what Dr. Hansen is doing is he's saying, well, you know what? There's actually a fourth assumption underlying Bell's inequalities. It's the assumption of continuous causation in physics. Now, what Hansen is saying is, guess what? That's not true. There is no continuous causation in physics. Temporal causation is not a real thing. And that's how he proves that the universe is predetermined without causation in time. What Dr. Hansen essentially is doing is answering the quantum measurement problem, which is this idea of matter coming into existence based on observation at the quantum level, and the collapse of the wave function somehow creates this one possibility among many possibilities that will exist in physical reality. And a big question of the measurement problem is, well, how does that happen? How do you go from an infinite number of possible physical realities to just one, just because of an observed, something that's being observed or measured? This is the measurement problem. And his answer to that is, well, there is no wave function, doesn't actually exist. There is no collapse of the wave function. There isn't an infinite number of possibilities and only one of them is observed. He's saying that there is no wave function. There is only one possibility, and that's a predetermined possibility, and that's it. So he solved the measurement problem by using a block universe and a predetermined universe without temporal causation. So what's so great about Dr. Hansen's proof? Well, it's fantastic because it tells us something very important about the universe, which we did not know, which is temporal causation is not real. The universe is a static reality. It doesn't change. It's like a flip book. You're just in the pages. And as your appearance on the manifold changes, that's your experience of going through time. So it's a static block reality. But the consequence of that is that everything is predetermined. So you can't change the future. It's impossible. You generally don't know what it is, but you can't change it, even if you wanted to. So in a predetermined universe, the most obvious question is, well, who predetermined it? And the answer is God. So superdeterminism is the number one argument for the existence of God, because you need a supremely intelligent God to predetermine the universe. So, for instance, if you think about any advanced technology or object that exists in the universe, like MRI machines or particle accelerators, or even the technology required to take man to the moon so he can land on the moon, in a predetermined static block reality, all of that has to be predetermined. It's not created each moment of time. It's created when the universe itself is created. So it's predetermined information, predetermined knowledge. Um, so whatever created the universe would have to know of and understand those advanced technologies and objects in order to predetermine their existence in the universe. That's the number one argument for the existence of God. Now, what makes the superdeterministic argument for the existence of God the number one argument and better than all the other arguments is because it can prove the intelligence of the creator. In fact, the creator has to be supremely intelligent because it has to be smarter than the most advanced technologies or objects or builders of those technologies in order to predetermine those things in the universe. The second best argument for the existence of God is essentially the first cause argument, or what many refer to as the Kalam argument. And this argument says that everything that has a beginning has a cause. The universe had a beginning, and therefore the universe has a cause. So it tells you that the universe had a cause to its beginning. And from that, one is to assume that that cause would have to be God. But the Kalam doesn't prove that God has to be intelligent or supremely intelligent. That's the big flaw in the Kalam. So you could simply say, well, yeah, the Kalam is true, but you don't need a God. You could use the wave function, for instance, some sort of quantum substratum that is based on a random probability distribution. And if physical reality is being created randomly or purely randomly, that's the opposite of intelligence. That's supremely unintelligent. So you can't get out of that argument using the Kalam, but you can get out of that argument using superdeterminism, because a random probability distribution cannot predetermine the existence of advanced technologies, because it can't know of and understand those advanced technologies in order to predetermine their existence. Plus, because temporal causation is not real, you can't have a wave function to begin with. Because the wave function doesn't actually cause anything. Because it can't, because temporal causation isn't real. So the Kalam is a far distant argument to the superdeterministic argument. And Dr. Hansen proved that the universe is superdeterministic. So you have a physics proof to rely on in order to make this argument, the number one argument that superdeterminism proves the existence of God. Now, this superdeterministic God is the God who created physical reality or created the universe. That is completely in line with the first line of the book of the Bible. In Genesis, line 1, we're told that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. This is a creator God, the God who created physical reality, the God who created the universe. So superdeterminism is perfectly in line with the idea of the Abrahamic God in the Bible, the creator God of physical reality in the universe. You really couldn't get a better argument for the existence of the biblical God than superdeterminism. Now, our society, unfortunately, is turning very secular and very atheistic and very nihilistic. And it's growing, it's becoming worse, especially in um, Western civilized countries. So, superdeterminism is a great antidote to that problem because superdeterminism, one, proves the existence of God and also proves that the universe is predetermined. So it completely undermines the Nietzschean nihilistic philosophy of the modern age that life is meaningless and that the universe is just random and each moment in time is completely novel and new and you don't know what's going to happen down the line and everything is new, so you have to create meaning for yourself. So superdeterminism completely undermines that Nietzschean philosophy or that Sartrean philosophy. Superdeterminism is fairly new in terms of movement in physics. It's Dr. Hanson's proof was in 2020. Now, there's a few physicists who are pushing superdeterminism. They're not using Dr. Hanson's method of proving superdeterminism. They're using the hidden variables method. But they're well-known physicists. Even one is a Nobel Prize-winning physicist. So there is this movement currently underway supporting superdeterminism in physics. It's led by physicists like Sabine Hassenfelder or Tim Palmer. So that's my introduction to my book, uh, God in Our Superdeterministic Universe. Number one argument for the existence of God. And I hope it's excited you. It should. It's a fantastic argument. And every theist or person who believes in God really ought to know about this because this will allow you to defeat every atheistic argument you can think of. So I hope you learned something, and I will be back with the next installment, and I will start on chapter 1 of my book. Take care.